Economics Chapter 2, Economic Systems, Discussion Number 1, Economic Systems and the Circular Flow Model. We're going to discuss some of the basic ideas of how economies are structured, both for microeconomic issues and macroeconomic issues. First of all, an economic system, the way a nation determines how its resources are going to be used and how people's needs and wants are going to be satisfied, which means that there are three basic questions that need to be answered by every single economy. What goods and services should be produced? How should they be produced? And who should get the stuff once it's produced? In other words, how is it going to be distributed? Deciding these questions involve trade-offs. Of course, we talked about trade-offs in the previous chapter. As resources are dedicated to one answer, they are siphoned from another possibility. And so this is where we need to, as an economy, decide how are these decisions going to be made. Now, there are very basic ideas or structures of economies that economists start from when they're starting to discuss current economies. The first one is called a traditional economy. Most times when we see a traditional economy, it's in a tribal setting. The Native American Indians had for the most part a traditional economy. A lot of the tribes that we see in the jungles have a traditional economy. They generally do not have any type of currency or money. Things are exchanged on a barter system. I have something that you want, you have something that I want, let's exchange. A lot of times the jobs are dynastic, which means, well, my father was the carpenter, so I'm the carpenter. Or my father was the medicine man, so I'm the medicine man. So that kind of job being passed on from generation to generation, which is also how the information on how to do that job is passed on from father to son or mother to daughter or however the thing is organized. And so traditional economies pretty much says we're not going to have a lot of change. There's also the command economy, which for the most part we call socialism. Government leaders decide who does what, whether it be by testing, schooling, or drawing lots. Most of these are where all the major decisions are made by a central planning system. The central planning obligate that certain productivities are to be met. You have to produce so many of these items, or such and such will happen. There is also the market economy, capitalism, which for the most part is what we have in the United States. This is where individuals get to make decisions as to what to produce, how to produce it, and then who gets it when it's done. Also, we want to look at the term market, which refers to a voluntary exchange of goods between two different individuals aided with the use of prices. That's exactly what the definition is written there. But one thing I want to make sure you understand is that a market is not solely a place. Market can be the internet on eBay or Amazon.com or uh, the Nike warehouses or in your front yard when you decide to trade baseball cards with a friend or I guess it's probably a little bit too young for you guys, but that's what a market economy is anywhere where people can exchange items and no one's telling them that they have to go someplace in order to get something. Now, we will say that economically speaking, while we recognize many different economies as being socialism or tribalism or market, is that for the most part, we do not have a single economy in the world that is exclusively a socialist system or a market system, and that rather we have a mix, and how we classify these economies is based primarily on where do they tend to go in the spectrum of government control. So most of this chapter is going to be mostly about market economy, but I do want to talk a little bit about socialism. Socialism became very popular after the advocacy of Karl Marx in the early 1800s, and then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, socialism became extremely popular with a lot of different people throughout Europe and even in the United States. Karl Marx believed that the working people, who we call the proletariat, would overthrow the wealthy property owners and then essentially share everything and work everything together. Now, when we understand the term socialism, it's where government controls most, if not all, of the production and distribution. Democratic socialism essentially means that through the government processes, the government takes control of the economy and starts instituting who does what, where, when. Authoritarian socialism generally comes through autocratic dictatorships, and with the autocratic dictatorship comes the natural progression of the not only are we going to tell you what you can do politically and environmentally and socially with other people, we're also going to tell you what you can do economically. Now, eventually, if you are a really good socialist and based on your philosophy, you may be aiming yourself toward the perfect society where you don't need a government to tell you everything that you're supposed to do and everything you're not supposed to do and how you're supposed to appropriately behave. Once that a perfect behavior has been achieved in an entire society, then the government's no longer necessary, and then it's called communism. So, when we talk about an economy, we're essentially taking a look at an extremely important economic concept called the circular flow model. You'll see it on slide number 5. As we look at this model, first thing I want you to see is that we have an exchange of goods and services, and money is going to be exchanged for that. Now, the first thing I want you to pay attention to is only the arrows that are on the outside of this circle. You see the very top one is that businesses sell goods and services to individuals. Cool. So we have stuff going from businesses to individuals. Now, how do the individuals get that with the exchange? Well, you see that the arrow underneath that, the blue one on the top, says that individuals pay for it. Again, good. Stuff going to the right, money going to the left. Now, but where do businesses get all that they need? Where do they get their factors of production in order to produce all the goods and services? Well, that's where we look at the bottom two arrows on this diagram. We see that individuals sell the resources to the businesses, their labor, the natural resources that we get to the ground, the entrepreneurship, and the businesses pay them with that purple arrow. So what I want you to see is that while money is going in a counterclockwise rotation, that the stuff is going in a clockwise. This is a circular flow model. Every economy must have these two complete circles of money and stuff. Now, in our economy, and pretty much every economy on planet Earth, the government is also a factor in the economy. And that takes money in and out of the system, but also government provides services to both individuals and businesses and is a necessary idea because there's a need for a police force, there's a need for a military, there's a need for rules and laws, and so the government does need money to function and they provide that particular service. So both businesses and taxes pay taxes to the government, and then the government provides certain benefit services for the individuals and also for the businesses. This concludes Chapter 2, Economic Systems, discussion number 1, or Economic Systems and the Circular Flow Model.